So I just had to see what all the hype was about. After seeing the initial advertisement for Palworld, I assumed it would probably be a novelty game that had some niche market appeal. Little did I know that it would become a phenomenon to the scope that it has. Largely, this was due to the fact that I just assumed it would be Pokemon with guns, but it's actually quite a bit more evolved of a concept. This game is truly a testament that gameplay is the most important aspect of a likable game, but it goes a step further and shows that original ideas aren't always the way of the future. As it is most famously stated, the greatest artists don't create, they steal. Now, of course I know this is not always the truth, because innovations need to happen at some point in order for people to have something to steal. But every once in a while there is a piece of media that takes all of the successful elements of what is working in the current culture and mashes them together in a successful blend. Palworld is very much this piece of media. It not only shamelessly steals from the creature collector style games of the past, but mixes together a lot of popular survival elements along with open exploration elements straight out of one of the most popular open world games in modern times. Having all these elements together, though, does create something unique in and of itself, with a strong brand identity. The fact that you can take the popular elements of Pokemon, such as leveling your creatures and dueling, but expand that in a way that feels fresh and new is essentially what people have been asking Game Freak to do for over a decade. The fact that independent development has reached the point where it can actually create a more innovative Pokemon game than the actual people in control of the brand is an amazing testament to the era that we're living in. Games like this will also push AAA developers to have to innovate and change. I personally haven't played a Pokemon game since Red, and the biggest reason for this is because it seemed largely like the same game was being released over and over again. I also wasn't a very big handheld gamer back in my childhood either, so that definitely played a role. Having friends who did play several of the subsequent versions, though, led to various conversations about how the formula could be innovated in a way that felt fresh and new. Honestly, the Digimon games did a much better job at creating a progression system where it felt like you could be more strategic in the application of evolving your creatures. The overlap of creature evolutionary chains felt much more dynamic, and allowed for more variety in what was largely the same turn-based combat dynamic as Pokemon. Palworld takes this to the next level by not only creating combat dynamics for your creatures, but allowing them to be an active part of a survival game. Instead of collecting for the sake of collecting, you are collecting workers to contribute to your slowly growing society. The different elements hold more utility than just being strong against other elements in combat. You feel more connected to the creatures that you collect, and the fact that you are more involved in the combat dynamics makes it feel like your character is actually the centerpiece of the game. Adding the personality of animalistic violence on top of this makes it feel a lot more like the gamer has freedom to make decisions about their interactions with the creatures in the open world. It's not just about working your way through unavoidable combat dynamics, but it's about strategizing what dynamics you interact with in the service of bettering your skills, base, and the combat ability of your pals. The game also makes you focus on progressive exploration, making for a very addictive gameplay loop of finding resources and creatures within your level range, and then collecting what you need to move on to the next logical landmark, with the obvious next conflict. The pacing of this, however, is left in your own hands. You could focus largely on exploration and resource gathering instead of proceeding with the next duel lined up in the open world experience. Much like the recent Zelda games, it offers you options to play the game at whatever pace you want. Unlike Zelda, however, it doesn't have any pre-existing expectations which allow me to get into the game without any baggage. I have obviously made my opinions pretty clear on the Breath of the Wild formula as it relates to the Zelda franchise and my general distaste for it. I, however, do enjoy the games for what they are. I just wish they weren't in my Zelda experiences. Palworld creates a new dynamic where this collectathon style really aids in the core progression of the game in a way that feels fulfilling in and of itself. There really isn't much of an epic narrative, it's more about discovery and creating your own story. As far as a fresh IP goes, I think this is a noble goal, especially for an independent developer. Modern gaming has largely become a theatrical experience in the AAA space, which has its enjoyable elements, of course. But the emphasis of having fun gameplay does need to be the focus of the vast majority of games, if they want to see mainstream success, that is. I'm not saying that a lot of games don't have a compromise, but it's been really fun to play a game where your own creativity and autonomy are the core of the experience. The shameless ripping off of other franchises is largely what makes this game so memeable. I think that the reason that this blatant inspiration works so well, though, is because it highlights the laziness of the core brands, as well as highlighting the strength of newer open-world game designs, and how they can be implemented in a fresh gameplay environment. I have yet to spend a whole lot of time with this game, but its addictive gameplay loop will certainly have me staying interested. I'm just glad that somebody finally made a better Pokemon game with new features and innovations that is selling actually better than Pokemon. Game Freak should honestly be ashamed of themselves when their latest title doesn't even hold a candle to the independent developer's first popular game. It honestly makes me laugh, and obviously is a breath of fresh air for a lot of gamers. I'm glad that the status quo is being challenged, and as the accessibility of resources to create games grows, I hope we will see more of the challenging of that status quo in the future. With the advancement of AI technology, who knows if the gatekeeping of larger intellectual properties will have much of a say in the future. This could possibly be the greatest leveling of that playing field, or it'll be the end of creativity as we know it. Only time will tell.